hi everyone. So, welcome today. Thanks for attending the talk. It's pretty early in the morning, so glad everyone made it. So, so my name is William Su. I'm one of the founders of StormAid. I'm also the Chief Product Officer at StormAid, so I oversee all the product and initiatives at StormAid. And before starting StormAid, I was working for this company called Facebook, building this thing called Facebook Credits. So that's kind of what I did before StormAid. So some background on StormAid. So we were founded in 2009, early 2009. And so when we first started the company, there were like two things that we really kind of believed in. So one was mobile. Even though we had like a background from the Facebook platform, we really believed in the potential growth of the mobile platform. And the other one was social games. Like we believe games are a lot more fun when you play them with friends. And so the other thing that that we did was all our games are free to play. So we monetize by selling virtual goods through in-app purchases. And since 3 years ago when we started the company, we grew a lot. So we now have 150 people, and they're all located in Redwood Shores, California, so close to the Bay Area. And here are some screenshots of our games. Like you can kind of tell that we have a pretty big portfolio of different types of games. Like we got games that are for guys, and we also got games that are for more female friendly. And we also have very hardcore types of games, all the way to casual arcade, and even some casino games. So pretty wide portfolio of games that we have. So here's the thing that he was talking about. So recently we announced some achievements that we had at StormAid in our past 3 years. So we've launched over 30 games, and those games have been downloaded over 300 million times on both iOS and Android. And it's our estimation that 1 in 5 iOS and Android users have played a StormAid game before. So some of you out there should probably have played one of our games. And another thing is last year, Apple released some data on the top grossing. So they had a list of the top 100 grossing apps for the whole year of 2011. And we had 10 of those top 100 apps. So hopefully that gives you guys some idea on kind of what we do at StormAid, the games that we build, the reach of our network, and also just how well we're doing in terms of monetization. All right, so StormAid is actually a self-funded and bootstrapped company, and we still are today. We have not taken any outside capital, no investment so far. So a lot of times, we get a lot of questions from people. They'll come to us and hey, StormAid, you guys congrats on the success. How do you guys do it? How do you guys have a company for over 3 years in this space and continue to grow really fast? And also a lot of people come to us and say, hey, I have this great app in the App Store, but no one gets to see it. No one installs it. What should I do? And then there are also people who come to us and say, hey, we got this pretty popular app 3 months ago that was climbing the chart and getting a lot of installs, and it was very popular. But now 3 months later, no one's installing it, and we're not really making any money off it. So those are all very common questions, and I guess today I'm going to talk to you more about kind of our experience at StormAid, building a sustainable company for the last 3.5 years, and also just share some of our insights and advices as well. All right, so so to us, a sustainable company is pretty simple. It's very basic. Essentially, you need to have revenue that is higher than your cost, your expense. And in social gaming, some of the most popular metrics that we use is DAU, daily active user, and ARPDAU, which is the average revenue per DAU. And essentially, those two will combine to be your daily revenue. And so then those two, I would say, are one of the most important metrics. If you're in the social gaming space and you're data-driven, you need to know this inside out. So today, I'm going to try to go over each of these 3 things and tell you kind of what we did at StormAid. All right. So starting with DAU. So obviously, when we started in 2009, we have 0 DAU. And when we first started the company, like we knew that we weren't just going to make one game for some people. Like it was our vision that like we were going to make games for everyone. And so we want people when they come to Storm 8, they will be able to have a game for them that they like to play with their friends. So off the bat, we knew that hey, we're going to make like a bunch of games. We're going to build like a network of games for our players. So when we started like 3 years ago in 2009, our first game was iMobsters. So it was a text-based RPG game. And in the first year, we worked really hard, and then we launched a total of 9 of those RPG games. And in 2010, that's when we decided, hey, you know what, like it's time for us to expand our user base again. And we wanted to target like a different demographic, and this time it was more the casual demographic. And so in 2010, we launched a bunch of like simulation, virtual world, a lot more casual, friendly, the story games. And we did that like throughout like 2010, 2011. And in 2011, we decided to venture into the mid-core RPG games as well. And more recently, in 2012, we launched our first slot game. So that's our first casino game. And we also have a new game that we just shipped last month called Bubble Mania, which is an arcade game. And that's also like a first for Storm 8. So over the last 3 years, we launched like 30 games, and we started from like 0 DAU in 2009, and we pretty much steadily grew and grew, and now as of today, we have over 6 million DAU. So that's 6 million players logging in each day on either like an iOS device or on Android devices. Okay, so how did we do this? Like, what, like kind of like looking back, like what are some things that, we thought that we did well? So, first of all, like I said before, like one of the first things that we knew was like, we didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. We wanted to make like a lot of games. And if you look at like the previous, graph, right? Like, we got to 6 million DAU. And that was not with one game. It was like, through like 30 games, across 3 years, on 3 different platforms, and we steadily grew the 6 million, the DAU from 0 to 6, and that was something that we kind of did. And throughout the whole 3 years, like we have tons of learnings. Like it's very difficult for anyone, to do something, and immediately get it right the first time. Like for us, like we had a lot of learnings. Like we made a lot of mistakes along the way. But we try to learn from it, like improve on it, and that's what we did. And there's something that's very important because like if you want to stay in this space, one of the things that like that lasts forever is really like your knowledge and domain expertise. So now that when we make like future games, we already have a pretty good understanding of what works and what doesn't work because we've probably done a whole lot of stuff in the past that failed. So that was the first takeaway. And second, we're first to the market. So, like when we first started Storm 8, like it was 2009, and not a whole lot of people were making iPhone game. And we were one of the first to make solo games on iPhone. And we were also one of the first developers to go on all the new mobile platforms, like when Android first came out on Google Play. We were also one of the first on the Amazon App Store, and also even on the Facebook HTML5 platform. And yes, and the other thing was, we were also one of the first to, use in-app purchase for social games. Like when we first started, there was no in-app purchase at all. Like the flow was a little messy, but once that came out, it was a game changer, and we immediately jumped on it. And so obviously, being first to the market like means that you get to, reach your users like the fastest. At the same time, the other thing is like you also will be able to get insights a lot faster as well. So that makes you kind of stay in the lead compared to everyone else. So that was something that like we really like focused on was being fast and being first to market. Because like honestly, this space is pretty competitive. It's it's changing all the time. You want to be able to adapt quickly. And finally, like don't stop innovating. Like if you look at like the history of Storm 8, We went from like text-based RPG to like, virtual world games to like casino games to like mid-core to like arcade. Like we did a lot of different things. Like, constantly we're thinking of like, new ways to like, reach more users, new types of technology, new platforms, new SDK. We were always like trying to figure out like how do we do it better, like how do we do it better than everyone else. So you should never stop, like try to innovate. And I would say like the moment you stop, like it's the moment that someone else will take over your spot. Like it is a pretty competitive, environment. So now that you have your, now that we have our, our community of users of like 6 million, like what can you do with this? Like, we're talking about like building things for the long haul, right? So, here's an example. So, Bubble Mania is our latest game on iOS, and we've launched this like 30 days ago. And in the first 3 days, we were able to hit like over 1 million installs. Like, how do we do it? Like, so what we did was like, since we already have like a very loyal, dedicated user base of 6 million people, when we launch a new game, we just tell them, hey, there's a new game. It's called Bubble Mania. And we think that you're gonna like it. Like, try it out. Like, so that's what we do. And that's how we were able to drive a lot of installs on launch. And I would say this is like, pretty important, and it's, it has a big impact, and it's very high leveraging. Why is that? So remember this, basic formula that I had at the beginning of the presentation. So, you have your revenue on the left side, and then you have your cost and expense on the right side. So for any like typical developer studios out there, like usually in terms of like costs, you have your development costs, like your engineers, your artists, your game designers, like pretty much your employee payroll. And then you have other things like, rent and, server costs and things like that. But the other like kind of cost that you're gonna like get to is marketing costs. Right now, like there's a lot of talk about, how do people get user acquisition, and it's costing a lot. So for example, like right now, if you were to go out and try to, if you have a decent game and you're trying to like buy ads for it, like buy installs, usually the cost is gonna cost you around like $1 to $2. And sometimes like there are crazy developers out there who bid as high as like $6. But essentially you're looking at like multi-million marketing budget if you were to want to drive like 1 million installs in 3 days. And as I said earlier, when you have a dedicated and loyal user base that loves your games and want to play more of your games, you can essentially get it for free. And not only is it free, like these are like, in terms of the audience, like these are, very dedicated social gamers. And so these traffic are very high quality. And so at this point, you're probably wondering, okay, so it seems like I either need to have a few million in the banks, or I need to have like 6 million DAU, and I don't have both. Like, what should I do? Like, this is a very common question. So, a lot of people come and say, hey, how do we get like user distribution? How do you guys do it? What should we do? Well, here's my kind of honest answer. Like, it is a very difficult, challenge for everyone. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy for the small guy. It's not easy for the big guys either. There's really like 3 ways you can, think about this. Like, one, of course, is like you have a lot of money. If you're a big corporation, you can spend tons and tons on marketing. Or if you're like a small developer, you can go out and raise funding and try to like get investment on your game. And then the second route is like, you can try to like take a lot of risk and hope to get like a hit out. But again, like, if you're looking for if you're aiming for the one-hit wonder, you might not be around in a few months just because the market moves so fast. And of course, number 3 is kind of what we did at Storm8. We took the time to build up our user base and collected like, like a loyal following. And from there on, we're now able to really leverage that to, to extend our game network going forward. But, I would say like, all of them are not easy ways to go. But if you're passionate about this space, like, there's still many success stories out there. Okay, so let's go into, so we've gone over DAU, we've gone over costs. Let's talk a little bit about monetization, app DAO. So this is very important. Like, if you have users but you can't monetize it, you still don't have a business. And you really need like revenue if you were to go for the long haul. You need revenue, you need resources to help you build like the future games. And also having a little, having good flexibility also helps you too. Like, so you don't have to make, sacrifices, like short-term sacrifices, and you can think a lot more like on the long term. So it's very important to, try to monetize your app and think about it as, as part of your core design, like in the beginning. So what kind of app DAO should you be looking for? So these are numbers for like, typical social games out there. Like, if you have a casual arcade game, they tend to monetize like 1 cent to 4 cents. And if you have a more decorative game, like game with like a decorative aspect and simulation, time management, you're probably looking at around like 4 to 10 cents. And then if you have like an RPG game that has, a lot of competitive elements, strategy element, you can monetize them pretty well. You can go as high as like over 10 cents. And of course, there's like kind of the latest like kind of popular thing, which is the casino stuff. And they also monetize really well too. They can go above 10 cents like easily. So those are kind of the numbers that you should be kind of aiming for. And at this point, you might say, hey, you know what? Like, I actually don't have those numbers. Like, what should I do? Like, what should I do now? Why am I not getting this app down? Well, like, here's what you need to do. Like, iterate, and iterate. Like, there's no way around it. Like, even for people like us who've been around for like 3 years, made 30 games. Like, again, like, it's very difficult to design something and have it work perfectly the first time. So at StormAid, we do a lot of like iterations, like ton of experiments, and I have like an example to share. So this game is called Pet Shop Story. So it's one of our story series of game, and the goal of the game is like you own a pet shop and you want to build this into the biggest and prettiest like pet shop that you can have, and then attract a lot of customers to your store and make tons of money. And one of the things that like the players need to do is like expand the pet shop. And here's kind of like the UI for it. And you can kind of see that like we pretty much gate the unlock of expansion on 3 things. So first you need to like get to 600 coins. So this is kind of more of a time thingy. Like the players need to go and spend the time to collect the coins and make the money. And then second, you have this requirement, which is permits. Essentially, there's an item that you need to collect from your friends. So it's, they need to do certain social actions. And finally, you can always pay with like, gems, which is the hard currency in our game, which is the real money. And so what you will see in a typical, feature like this in solo games is that like, off the bat, you have people who are like very interested in the game and they'll be, spending the time, collecting coins and then doing a lot of viral. But over time, some of your more engaged users, they'll start understanding the real value of this unlock, this expansion, and they'll start associating like real world value to it. And that's when they convert to payers and decide to skip all those gates by just paying with real money. So that's a pretty typical of like way of how solo games are monetized. Like we give players options, and then we monetize on the gates and the convenience. So at StormAid, we have built our own analytic framework, and we do tons of experiments and tons of A/B tests, and we're able to do a lot of experience on things like this by changing certain in-game value on the fly in real time. So in this case, what you want to do is you want to test different values for the coins, the amount of coins, the number of permits that's required, and also the amount of gems. Like you want to test like values that are higher than that, values that are like smaller than that, and essentially create a bunch of variances and show them to the users, and then start measuring it. So that's kind of like a simple overview. Like in terms of A/B testing, like there can be like a completely new presentation on just the science of doing these things. But that's kind of like briefly how you would do it. And so what happened like in this example, like after we did a lot of A/B testing. So in the end, we found like the optimal variance, which is like 1,500 coins, 6 permits, and costing 18 gems. And what this did was like it boosted revenue for this feature by 50%. So you can kind of see how like such a small change to the values can have such a like big impact. So you should always keep this in mind. Optimization iterating is very important. It can make a big impact and changes to your monetization. So some kind of also like advices on this as well, like don't just monitor and say, hey, I got 50% more of this feature, great, let me move on. Well, you need to monitor a lot of things. Like you need to look at overall monetization. Did this cannibalize your other features? You need to look at retention. You need to look at progression. Did now that we might be making more money, but are we making the requirements too difficult and people are not able to progress in the game? Like, what is the impact on the virals? Like when you change the number of permits that are required. Like, so all those things like you need to really think about, and that's what you need to do. And the other thing is like try to identify like high impact areas. Like you don't want to do this exercise on on a feature that makes like 1% of your revenue. Like what you want to do is like identify your revenue streams, look at which one contribute the most, and then start optimizing those because you want to get the most impact out of your time. Okay, so finally, again, like this the very basic way to look at like a business. Like you need like users, DAU, and you need to monetize your DAU, and you need to control your costs. Like if you can like master all these things, then you have a pretty good shot at having a sustainable business in the mobile social gaming world. So that's all I have today. Thanks for attending, and any questions? Oh.
If you could wait for the mic, please, then we don't have to repeat the question.
I've got a pretty loud voice, so I don't know if First off, thank you very much for the presentation. Your focus on analytics, couldn't agree more. Just wondering what you recommend. Do you suggest going with Flurry? Do you have some proprietary analytics tool you use? What's your guidance as to best of class for those analytics?
So that's a very good question. Like there's a lot of like services out there that provide analytics. Like when we first started StormAid, there was we were pretty early, so we had none of those. So we built our own infrastructure in terms of analytics. We have like things like Hadoop running like MapReduce and doing tons of like analytics. So I would say it depends on kind of like how much resources you have. Like if you're not gonna have, if you're gonna be focusing a lot on game development and you don't have the extra resources to like build this thing, then definitely go with kind of like the services out there. Because a lot of time, like you don't need to like go that deep to see a problem. Like you can just like look at some very overall like numbers and trends, and you'll be able to pick out like problems immediately. It's only when you really like kind of want to dig deep and do a lot of like experiments and analytics, that's when I would suggest to build your own, because you want to be able to be flexible and be able to kind of do things on the fly. So that would be kind of like my recommendations, and a lot of it depends on kind of like how big your team is and how dedicated you are to kind of doing analytics. But definitely even if you were to build your own, I would suggest like start with some of the overall metrics. Like look at like when you're launching content features, how is your app DAU changing? How is your DAU changing? Like those things usually already tells a lot, like in terms of kind of what's working, what's not.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the talk, William, and I know everybody here in the audience appreciates your honesty in explaining the and exposing the ARPUs. But a question, if you put them on stage, could you tell us what the biggest spenders, what the whales, what's the biggest customer you actually have, and how much do they spend, say, in a month?
So like it really depends on the games themselves. Like for example, like at StormAid, we have like the casual games and the hardcore game. So in the casual games, they tend to not spend as much, definitely, because it's just the nature of the game. Like a lot of it, we monetize on progression. By that, we mean like when they level up, when they buy decorations. But at a certain point, there's not a whole lot. That even if they want to spend, they can't spend that much. Whereas like in games, where like in casino games or in RPG games, where the end game is like say like PvP. Like that's when they can really go out and spend and really separate themselves from other players. And same for casino as well. They can kind of like play slots forever and ever. And so in terms of like kind of like revenue-wise, like in terms of the whales, like for the hardcore game, it can definitely go above like the thousands, like in the range. But obviously there are like there aren't that many of them, So but like that's kind of like the range. Typical whales can go to 1,000, and you might have like one or two like really rich people who spend like even like in the 10,000 range.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Round of applause for William.